Hello everyone, welcome to the session. In this session, we will be discussing about applet life cycle. So let's start the session applet life cycle. At the end of the session, you will be able to learn about life cycle of an applet in Java. So as we know that basically when we talk about Java programming language, so despite of creating the programs in offline mode or creating the programs only, we can add or we can merge that program with the web page also. Okay, so that the program can be, give the program can be able to give the feel of the dynamic page. Now, what is that dynamic page? Basically, dynamic page is a page which gives the feeling that that is a live page that we saw on n number of websites. So in website, what we are observing a layout. That is, layout will be termed as the HTML layout and also known as the front end. And to design that front end, we have used and in almost every front end, we have to use HTML along with CSS. Okay, so this is how we can create the front end where we saw that there is a text and the text color is this and text is moving in horizontal direction or in vertical direction, and there are some images that are aligned with that text, and there is a background, there is a table and many more information like this, and there is hyperlink which is able to navigate the user from a particular page to the another page. So this is what view of the website is. But in backend, we are having a programming language, and here specifically we are talking about the Java. So whenever we will be analyzing that what is the coding in the backend of a particular page. So in the same manner, Java programming language is also providing flexibility to the user, that user can create the dynamic pages, create the dynamic web pages, and also connect the front end with the back end, and the entity that is responsible for providing the dynamic content to the programming language or to any of the website is known as applet. So basically, applet are the special type of programs that we can embed with the web pages to generate the dynamic content. And basically, Java is providing a class which is known as applet, and it is an interface also. So basically, Java is providing all the classes that are required when we need to work with the applet. But there is a life cycle of applet. Okay, there is a process, there is a hierarchy of certain methods that are there in the life cycle of applet. So the life cycle of an applet defined as maybe defined as a process that how a particular object inside a program will be created, and then how it will be started working, and then how it will be stopped, and then why it is destroyed and how it is destroyed, okay, during the entire execution of its application. So basically the applet life cycle contains all the features that an applet has to cover during the lifetime of a program. Okay. And when we talk about the phases of life cycle, so there are mostly five phases of life cycle in an applet, and the name of those five phases are init, start, stop, paint, and destroy. We can also say that these are the five methods that an applet is required so that it can help any of the programmer to create the dynamic web pages, and it can be enabled by any of the users so that it can be connected with the HTML page so that the dynamic content can be initiated. So along with the browser, the applet also works on the client side, thus it is having less processing time. So it's not like that if we are connecting two programs, if we are merging two programs, one is on the web page and second is on the offline mode in any of the notepad or any of the tool, then it will be a time. So basically, because applet is working on the client side only, okay, and the client is responsible for creating the applet. So it's not a time consuming process to connect both the programs and to merge both the programs and to create that dynamic page, to create that dynamic content. Now let's discuss one by one the various phases, or we can also say that the various methods of applet life cycle. So the very first stage of an applet is when an applet is born. Okay, and the stage when an applet is born is known as initialization. That is, init phase or init method is used. As I told you that applet is a class. So whenever we are having a mindset that this is a particular class, so by default we should understood that when a class is there, then related to that class there will be certain methods. Okay, so those methods are init method, start method, stop method, destroy method, and these methods are actually the life cycle phases of the applet. So when we are saying that we have created an applet, okay, it's not yet has been connected to any of the program or any of the HTML page, but what we have done, we have created an applet. So that phase or that term or that part of the life cycle of an applet will be termed as the born phase, and born phase will be represented by the init method. Now next is running. Now the applet is ready to run. Okay, it has been initialized. It now it wants to show its capabilities. We want to connect that particular applet with the HTML page, so that as we are talking about the dynamic content, so we will be able to get that dynamic content. So now the next phase will be the running phase. Okay. So bone is that applet is ready to use. Now when we are using that applet, when we are merging that applet with any of the HTML file, then we can say that now the applet has been started. Okay. And from that starting phase, that means this is the running phase. Now, from that starting phase, it can be converted to the idle phase. Sometimes there are issues with the HTML file. There are some changes that are required from the user side, and there are certain exceptions. There are certain errors. There can be any hardware failure, and n numbers of reasons can be there where it is required that the user needs to stop that running applet. So, whenever an applet is stopped, that means now it is in the idle state. Again, when the problem is over, and sometimes it is the need of the program, not only the exception or the errors are responsible for converting the applet from running state to the idle state, but also sometimes it is the need of the program that has to pause for some of the nanoseconds. Okay, so that pause or that transition in the state of running applet to the idle applet, then that will be termed as the stop method. Then again, if there is required that user needs to convert that idle state into the running state again, then we can say that now the applet is in the starting phase or start method has to be used. Now, a very interesting method is there which is available in the applet lifecycle, that is the paint method. Basically, paint method is used to make the customization in the page that has been created by the user. If we want to create some GUI based things, if we want to create some pixel based things, and if we want to change the size and provide some color, some natural colors which are provided by the Java programming language, then we have to use the paint method. Paint method, as the name is suggesting, that we are customizing, we are making some formatting to the page that we have created. And after that, the last phase of the applet is dead. It is also very important. We can't leave the applet in the working state. We have to destroy the applet, because once we have connected that applet with any of the HTML file for the purpose of security, for the purpose of safety, and for the purpose of getting the better output, it is required that we have to inform the JVM that this is the only work that we are required. Now it's the rest responsibilities of the HTML to create the page. So these are the phases of the, or we can also say that methods of the applet lifecycle. Now let's start discussing these methods in more detail. So the very first method is init method. This is also known as the initialization method. So that this is the very first method that is used to run which when the applet is initialized, and it can be called only once at the time of initialization. It's not like that again and again we are initializing. Calling of a method or invoking a method, both are the same things. When we are using the term that we have called a method or we are calling a method, that means actually we are invoking a method. So invoking and calling are same thing. So it has to be used once in a life cycle of an applet. So the next thing is about init method is that whenever a web browser is created, so the object is initialized. That is the web browser, after checking the security settings, the init method within the applet. So this is the responsibility of the web browser. Web browser, why this is the responsibility of web browser? Because the HTML file that you have created will be executed by the help of the any of the web browser. So, and you have connected that HTML file with the applet. So this is the responsibility of that web browser, that after checking the security settings, it has to run the init method within the applet. Now, next method is the start method. So start method contains the actual code where the actual working, actual logic of the applet has been given. And this is invoked immediately just after the init method is invoked. Although it will be invoked after init method will be successfully invoked, but it will immediately be invoked. Okay, so we can say that So it means that whenever init method is started, immediately just after that init method will be start its working. So every time the browser is loaded or refreshed, the start method is invoked. But when we talk about the init method, then init method will be started at once only. So whenever we are using and it with any of the HTML code with any of the web page, then the init method will be called once the applet starts working, and then start method will be called again and again whenever we are we will be refreshing the web page or we will be refreshing the browser again and again. Now, next about start method is that it is in an inactive state until the init method is invoked. So the working of start method will depend upon the working of the init method. And it is also invoked, or it is also called whenever the applet is maximized, applet is restored and moved from one tab to another tab in the browser. Now, next method of an applet stop method. Basically, as the name is suggesting that stop method will stop the execution of an applet. And apart from this, whenever the stop method is invoked or stop method is called, the applet will be stopped, and it will be stopped whenever we will minimize the applet, we will move the applet from one tab to another tab. And when the particular applet is moved from another browser, then it will be the stop method will be invoked. What I want to suggest or what I want to convey from this particular point is that init method will be called once, and after that start and stop method will be called again and again. Start and stop method are dependent on each other. Okay, so for example, we have created an applet and we are running that applet. That applet is in running phase. So what will be happening? That applet has been initialized. Okay, now for example, we are minimizing the applet. So what will be happening? The applet will stop its working. Now what method will be called? Just after the init method, start method will be called. But when we will minimize the applet, or we can also say that we will minimize the browser. By default, the applet will be minimized. So whenever we will minimize the browser, what will be happening? The stop method will be called. Stop method, why stop method will be called? Because now the applet working will be stopped. And when we will again maximize that browser. Okay. Now again, what will be called? Again, the start method will be called. In the same manner, when we will refresh, when we click on the refresh button or when browser will refresh itself, then immediately the stop method will be called. And just when browser will stop refreshing, it will start for working. Now what will be happening? Immediately start method will be called. So this is how start and stop method will be work. So in the same manner, a line is also given here that when we will go back to that page where we have refreshed or we minimized and we have we were moving from one tab to another tab. So the start method is invoked again, because when we minimize, so that means the stop method is called. But when we go to that minimize page again, that means when we will maximize that. Okay. So now the page is again in the active mode. So the start method will be invoked. So start and stop method will be connected to each other. Now next method is the destroy method. Destroy method will destroy an applet when the work of the applet is over or when the execution of the applet is completed. It is invoked when the applet window is closed. Okay, not minimized. When the applet window is closed, then by default the applet destroy method will be called, or the tab which is containing that web page is closed. When we are minimizing, when we are resizing, or when we are fluctuating from one tab to another tab, then start and stop method will work. But once we have created an applet, we are in the running phase of an applet, and we have closed the page, the web page or the window, or we have closed the tab which contains the applet, then the destroy method will be called. So what it will do, it will remove the applet object from memory and will execute only once, and we're going to start the applet once it is destroyed. So we have to again follow the complete entire process. Okay. So it's not like that once the applet is destroyed, then again it will go to the in its state. For that, we have to again close the complete program, and then we have to run that program again. We have to write down the code to run the applet again, and then it will start its working. Now next is paint. Paint method is a method which belongs to the graphics class in Java. That means there is a class that is graphic and there is a class that is applet. And to connect both these classes, we are having a method which is known as paint method. So when we will be using the paint method in the applet lifecycle or in the applet, That it means that it will connect that applet to the graphic class. So why graphic class is required? Graphic class is required because sometimes we are required to draw shapes like circle, square, and many more in the applet. So it is executed just after the start method and when the browser or the applet windows are resized. So we can use the paint method. Now next is there is a sequence of method execution when an applet is executed. Now, what is that sequence? Firstly, we will be having the init method, then we will be having the start method, then we will be having the paint method. In the same manner, there is a sequence of method execution when an applet is executed. So it will be stop and destroy. Okay. So stop and destroy will be in the same sequence and init, start, paint will be in the same sequence. Now let's start discussing that how life cycle of an applet will work. So the very first phase or the very first step of the life cycle of an applet is that a Java plugin software is responsible for managing all the life cycle of an applet. And an applet is a Java application which will be executed in a web browser and which will work on the client side also. And it does not have any of the main method because it runs in the browser. So whenever we are having a program which will run in the browser, then there is no need of the main method. And thus it is created and to be placed on an HTML page because it is not having the main method. And init, start, stop, destroy methods belong to the applet class. So whenever we will be creating an applet, all these methods will be called by default. Now, paint method belongs to the another class, that is the graphic class. And for graphic class, we will be having the AWT component. So the paint method will belong to the component class and it will combine the applet and the graphic class. So in Java, if we want to make a class, an applet class, we need to extend the applet. So there is no need to create the applet class. The thing is that we just need to extend that class and by default, all the methods which belongs to the applet lifecycle will be called by itself. And we just need to mention that what we want to do by the help of those methods. So whenever we will create an applet, we are creating the instance of the existing applet class, and thus we can use all the methods of that class. Now there is a syntax of entire life cycle of an applet. For that purpose, the very first line that we have to keep in mind that there is no need to create the applet class because applet class is already created. So for that, using that class, what we have to extend keyword. So for example, in this program, we have used a class and the name of the class is test applet lifecycle, which is extending the already created class, which is applet. So as test applet lifecycle has extended the applet class, so by default, all the methods of the lifecycle of an applet are now being accessible by the applet lifecycle. Now we have used the method that is init method, which is used to initialize the object. Then we will be using the start method from where the actual code will start its working. Then we will be using the paint method, which belongs to the graphics class, okay, which will help the user to draw the shapes. And then we will use the stop method, which will stop the execution or working of an applet. And then we will use the destroy method, which will destroy the applet code. So once the destroy method will be called, then the entire applet will be destroyed. But stop method will not destroy the applet. It will be fluctuating from start to stop, stop to start again and again. But once destroy method will be called, we will not start the applet again. So this is the syntax of the entire life cycle of an applet. So in this session, we have discussed about the life cycle of an applet. I hope now you are having the clarity that what are the various phases of an applet life cycle, how the life cycle of an applet will work, and how the methods which are there in the life cycle of an applet are, working and are related to each other. We'll see you in the next session. Thank you so much.